Hi, I'm Ben.
And I'm Josh.
And this is a Bad at Magic podcast, a podcast about games, life, and other things. And welcome to episode 95.
Okay, so I'm going to depart from the norm, and I'm going to start with why 95 links to this episode.
Sure.
That 95 is one of Pixar's secret numbers.
Okay, I know like what they put on the license plates on the cars and stuff like that.
That's the one everybody knows. That's the one that's on every internet Easter egg headlines. Like, oh, did you see A113 in all of the different scenes of all the different Pixar movies?
Yeah, or the name Harryhausen or the Pizza Planet truck or whatever.
Right. And A113, for those of you who are not in the know, which is a null set for this audience again, but that is a classroom number of the character animation class at California Institute of the Arts, where a lot of the Pixar guys got their start or started in animation or whatever. So they try to hide A113 everywhere.
Okay.
But 95 is this weird snake eating its own tail kind of Pixar number, okay? So in 2006, they released the movie Cars. You had kids in 2006?
Yeah, we definitely got swept up in Cars mania.
Okay, so my son wasn't born until 2011, and he still got swept up in Cars mania. Cars everything. Cars is amazing. I think Planes came out at that time, which then linked him into all the other Cars universe.
Okay.
We need to have a discussion on that. Have we already discussed that? I think the forklifts...
I think we did. Yeah, Planes was a horrible movie.
Well, but in the canon of the Cars universe, forklifts should like rule all of the other vehicles because
Yes.
they're the only ones with hands.
You definitely mentioned that.
Okay, good. That has to be out there somewhere. Anyway, but the number for Lightning McQueen, which is our star character, is number 95.
Okay.
And the reason it's 95 is because Toy Story, the original Toy Story, came out in 1995.
So far, so good.
Do you remember Toy Story when it came out in 1995?
Absolutely. That was my senior year of high school.
Oof. I was, I don't remember where I was. I think I was in middle school. But my family, we went on a completely sporadic thing, camped out in our RV at midnight to buy the VHS at the local Best Buy. And then I watched it at like 1 a.m. that day. And what's really funny is that was, do you remember watching it back then and thinking, holy crap, this is a pinnacle of technology?
I definitely, watching it my senior year of high school and looking at it and just being in awe at the brilliance of computer-generated animation. It was just awe-inspiring. It still is.
Have you watched it recently?
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks terrible. It looks like something an undergrad could churn out in a weekend, and his professor would be mad at him for it. This is actually part of the reason, like the limitations of technology. All this was cutting edge back then, but it was still very limited, and they couldn't make the characters look like anything but plastic, which is part of the reason they made it about toys.
Yeah. Yes. But like in the special features for Toy Story, they had that one about the baby where it's crawling around playing with the toys that kind of led into them doing Toy Story, and the baby looked horrific.
No, everything looks like horrific in that movie if you go back and watch it again.
Well,
like
I don't
the
know.
dog. I have nightmares about Sid's dog.
Yeah, okay, Sid's dog also. But they were very ambitious. Like the end scene where they're chasing through the neighborhood, I mean, they had to animate that whole neighborhood, like every leaf on every tree and everything. It was, I mean, they didn't.
Yeah, and they caused like some of the brownouts in California with all the processing power they're sucking down. That's actually not, I don't know if that's real or not. I wouldn't be surprised. Anyway, so 95, Lightning McQueen is 95 because Toy Story came out in 1995, okay? Then Toy Story 3 came out. I don't remember what year that came out, but at the beginning, they're doing this elaborate imagination scenario with all of the toys. And there's a steam engine that Woody has to jump onto. And the number on the front of the steam engine is 95 in reference to Lightning McQueen, which is in reference to the original Toy Story. So here we've come full circle on Easter egg references for Toy Story.
Okay, cool. Well, big fans of Pixar on this podcast. Now, Josh, before we do anything else, something momentous has happened for the hosts of the Bad at Magic podcast since the last time we talked. I believe you got a very official-looking certificate in the mail.
In the mail. It said, do not bend on it and everything. Yes, so finally, after all my trials and tribulations and years of effort, I am now a certified public accountant in the state of Arizona.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Thanks, buddy. That means my rate for recording the podcast with you has gone up by 20%. Just be aware of that the next time you're budgeting for 2024.
Well, so how long did it take you all in all?
Oh, that's a good question. So I decided to transition into accounting in 2018. I think summer of 2018 is when I decided I was going to get started. I started getting my master's degree with my post 9/11 GI Bill. I started studying for the enrolled agent exam at the same time. I got a job in December of 2018 as an accountant. So then here we are. What is this? 4 years and 5 months later?
Okay.
4 months. So, yeah. 4 years, 4 months.
Years.
Yeah.
Well, how does it feel?
I mean, it feels nice to have one. So here's the thing. Like, you want to feel relief, right? You want to be like, yes, I have achieved it. And this is in your mind, you vision that you're climbing this mountain and you're going to get to the top and you're going to plant your flag and you're going to see the whole world of possibility open up below you. Only when you get there and you plant the flag, you realize it's just like another step and there's more mountain. You're like, oh crap, this isn't the top yet? Because as a part of the letter in the big envelope that had my official certificate, the first page of it was the certificate. I'm like, yes, certificate. The next page was, congratulations, you're a CPA. And the page after that was, here are 5 pages of forms we need you to fill out and mail back to us because we only have an online system for applicants and an online system for CPAs, and you're not in either of those anymore. So you have to fill this out by hand, and you have to write a paper check, and you have to mail it to us. There is no online way to do that, to transition you from applicant to CPA. And then another letter specifying, oh, by the way, you renew your CPA during your birthday month, and you have a requirement of continued professional education, CPE. But since you just got it, we're going to prorate it this year. So instead of the normal 60 hours, you only owe 25. And here is how they break down and what you need to do. And so I almost have more learning to do now than I did when I was getting my master's to get the CPA.
Well, I maintain an industry security certification for IT professionals, and it requires 120 CPE hours every 3 years, so 40 a year. And I found that I get at least 30 a year organically. I don't have to put in too much effort to get that extra 10.
Well, and this is the thing. This is now my profession, right? This is what I do for a living. And so I'm trying to rewire my brain to take a more active stance. Like I changed the start page on my work browser to now, also I had to pay money to become, a member of the official AICPA, which is the American Institute of CPAs, where that's where they have all the CPE and stuff online.
It's the privilege of being one of us tax.
Yep. And that's not cheap, but it's fine. I changed the start page of my work browser to their news page and their news feed. And so I'm trying to actively and deliberately be more involved as an accountant in the world.
Okay. Did you add the letters to your signature block on your email?
First day. Absolutely.
Yes.
I had MSA, which is Masters of Science in Accountancy, as part of my signature block. I replaced that with CPA. And so far, nobody has said a word to me. I think everybody just assumed I was already a CPA. But it's fine. It's fine.
Well, I noticed. Hey, so we're going to put this knowledge that you've gotten certified now to the task today, and we're going to talk about some taxation and securities and exchange issues later on in the podcast.
Ooh, spoilers for later.
All right. In episode 94, you and I talked about something called Digital Nomad at Sea, and you were recalling off the top of your head the amount that it costs to go live on a ocean-going vessel and commute for a year. How much was it you said it cost?
And here's the thing. I just listened. I re-listened to us when I run. Is that weird? I listen to my own voice when I run? That's a narcissistic trait, I'm sure. It's a little weird. But I remember saying, it's $300,000. And you're like, are you sure? You give me multiple outs. Are you sure? That seems like a lot. And every time I'm like, I'm absolutely certain it was 6 digits. And I dug that hole. I think
it's $25,000.
No, yeah, you were, yeah. I don't know why I didn't give you more credit on that one. But no, I said it was $300,000. And then later I went maybe even if it was just $100,000. But no, it's even more shockingly low than that. Maybe this is why. My brain refused to believe how cheap it was because this Digital Nomad at Sea thing was $30,000 a year.
$30,000.
That's honestly, Ben, that's about the going rate for a normal apartment in America right now for a year.
Right?
Yeah, and includes all your amenities. It includes going to see all these wonderful locations around the world.
So after you told me about it, and I actually went to the website that I linked in the show notes to look at it, they make it look like it's an episode of, what do I want to say?
The Love Boat?
Yes, exactly. Just a bunch of like sexy under 30, working professionals who are just partying every day and maybe getting some work done.
I'm not going to lie to you, Ben. That could be a thing. Like, you imagine if you and I, like, well, you've never been not married, but I'm remembering a time when I was in my early 20s, and I was a young urban professional working at the Air Force Base, and that was my life. Now, partying in the sense that, I nerded out and I was playing video games and going to Magic every other night. But still, like, the same thing kind of applies, where it's just you work all day and then you go until you go party until you pass out, and you wake up and you do it all over because you're in your 20s, and sleep doesn't need to be a thing when you're in your 20s.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it did look really attractive. Like, here they are in the Caribbean. Now they're in the Mediterranean. Now they're up the Amalfi Coast or whatever.
Well, just imagine the kind of life experience that we were talking about. Like, everybody always says traveling is one of the things that you need to do to really expand your awareness of everything. And just being a 20-something, working a telework job, so you're making, like, you have a career and you have a steady income, but then you have the opportunity to go to all these foreign places, and you're meeting new people, and just, I don't know, it seems like the coolest apartment building ever.
Yeah. Huh. I wonder if they try to plan the stops in port so that they occur on weekends.
I doubt it. I don't know. Like, how much accommodation does the cruise company give to the people that are going to be there all year, whether they stop or not?
Right. Like, your friends are jumping off the boat and going to, like, an island, one of the Greek islands, and you're like, I can't, I've got a meeting.
Hey, sorry I'm late for this Zoom call. I had to break out of Cairo prison. Partied a little too hard last night.
Yeah. All right. Just somebody brought something to my attention last time, kind of along the lines of what I talked about with the Principality of Sealand, and they asked me, did you know about the occupation of Alcatraz?
Oh, dear. Did somebody find yet another island and then try to claim it as their own?
Yeah. So this happened back in, like, the late 60s, early 70s, and it was brilliant because some Native Americans who were kind of disenfranchised with the, what happened in the United States with their people and their lands and stuff, noticed that the island of Alcatraz had been gone defunct as a prison and was just sitting there in San Francisco Bay unused. And so they found in 1969, 89 Native Americans and their supporters went out to Alcatraz Island and basically declared it official Indian territory. And basically underneath the treaty of the 1868 Treaty of Fort Laramie, it said that Native Americans could take claim to anything that wasn't occupied by citizens of the United States.
Oh, gotta love it when we exploit old rules on the books.
Yeah, so it's a 100-year-old treaty that's still on the books, and they basically went out and took occupation of Alcatraz Island. Well, it only lasted about 19 months, and unlike the British, who kind of just let Major out there on
the Principality of
Sealand go, they started escalating with these guys on Alcatraz. They cut off the power, and they sent the FBI and Nick Cage and stuff, and yeah, it didn't go real well.
That's the difference between the British government and the U.S. government. The British government just started sipping their tea and like, we'll wait them out. We've been around for thousands of years. They won't be. And just keep sipping. The U.S. government is like, oh, I don't think so. Not on my watch, buddy.
Yeah, so these Indian guys went out there and similar to the Principality of Sealand, set up a radio broadcast where they were broadcasting basically in violation of the FCC, but from sovereign territory in the Bay of San Francisco, started broadcasting basically their grievances against the United States, abuses against the American people and their tribes, the Native American people and their tribes and these kinds of things. And they've been recorded and archived. So a lot of the graffiti on the walls of the prison is related to this group that was there basically for 19 months starting in 1969 until they were finally taken off the island. And now if you go and tour Alcatraz Island, where it's kind of been restored as a semi-functional prison, part of the tour is like, here's where the occupiers were back in 1969, 1970 when they came and took over Alcatraz Island. So have you reinstalled TikTok since we last spoke?
Ben, I am happy to announce that I am 2 weeks clean of TikTok, and I can feel my attention span growing day by day.
Isn't that encouraging? Like, I don't know about you, but I think there was a moment when I started to realize that the internet was eroding my ability to focus on things like reading books or watching long-length movies, that I wondered if it would ever come back. So it's good to know when you stop for a minute that it does, or did it?
It took a few days. I'm not going to lie. I had some serious withdrawals for the first couple of days. I just wanted that sand that we talked about. I had, those little moments walking. This is the thing, though. Is this really sand-filling moments? If I'm walking from one room to another, do I really need to be watching 3 TikToks on the way? These are the kinds of questions I've had to ask myself over the course of the week.
Is that really what was happening?
Oh, yeah. Yes. When I say downtime, I mean like any time I wasn't actively looking at a screen, which is that sounds just horrible, doesn't it?
Wow. Man, that's crazy. Okay. Well, congratulations. I'll check in with you again next time as your sponsor. I want you to know that I'm here for you. Anytime you need me, just give me a call. Oh,
I appreciate that. Now, one thing I've been struggling with, I am reconnecting with a lot of my YouTube channels that I forgot about and discovering some new ones, so that's been nice.
Yeah, you were trashing on one of my YouTube favorites a couple weeks ago. You said he never releases new content. CGP Grey.
I did Well, he obviously must listen, because CGP Grey, I called him out as like he's been AWOL for who knows how long, and then I feel like it's this week he's released like 3 videos. He released 2 videos today. I was watching one before we started recording.
I haven't seen that one yet. Thank you for letting me know. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, he grades all of the U.S. state flags back to his roots.
Awesome. Well, I know they're getting ready to redo the Utah one, and they're probably, with the old one, they're probably near the bottom of his list. He ranks them all 1 through 50?
No, he put them on a tier list. S to F. And what's
okay.
Like this is, I only watched the first 2 minutes, but he's like, I'm going to put you, like, he set it up as if the 50 states are students, elementary school students in his classroom. And then he lays out the rules for making a flag. And he goes, because I know you're all going to do horrible, and because you don't have any attention span, I'm going to put it on a tier list, S to F. And because I can already see some of your submissions, I'm going to break the F bracket into FS to FF. To like, these are the best and the worst. Like, he's going to rank all of the Fs
among
separately.
The terrible ones?
Yeah, because there are so many terrible ones that they're going to get their own bracket.
Okay, I'm anticipating one particular thing I remember hearing him and Brady talk about on Hello Internet, and that was the Maryland state flag.
I haven't gotten to that part yet, but I'm expecting him to go on a rant about how it's amazing because it's so horrible.
Okay, so I think he's going to give it an SF.
An SF. Yeah, or he's going to put it by itself. Like, you don't get a grade, just go to another classroom.
Yeah, but the idea that he gave, that you just described real quickly, is that something so bad that it wraps around and becomes good again. Like that movie that you won't turn off when you're flipping through the channels and come across it late on a Saturday night. You're like, oh, this crappy old thing. Wow, that was great.
This is the worst movie ever. Sit down and watch it with me.
Yeah, so the Maryland state flag is kind of like that. It's so horrible that it's good again.
I'm proud to be a resident of Arizona, which has traditionally been one of his higher ranked flags because
right up there with Colorado.
Yes, they're not. I'm not going to say it's iconic, but it does the things that you want a flag to do. Be recognized easily from a distance. No more than like 3 colors. No words. No tiny details that you can't see from more than 5 feet away. That kind of stuff.
Yeah. Agreed. Utah was like that, and it's going to be similar to Arizona. But I've heard people complain that it just looks like a corporate logo, and you can't deny it.
No, corporate logos are starting to adopt more simple iconography like flags. Which actually, all right, you just opened up a whole realm of discussion that we should be terrified about. Why are corporations trying to do more nation-state style branding?
Did you see the video that CGP Grey did about the Antarctica flag?
I did, yes.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know that initially it was a white flag, which wasn't really that interesting, and then they made it into the one that was in the UN colors that was the shape of the continent, but that technically belonged to a company that went defunct, so they couldn't use it. So now they made this new one that's really cool, and I dig them all.
He's a flag guy. Like, you can tell he has a passion for flags.
I think it's because it gets at the heart of like a lot of different things. It's design, it's iconography, it's history, it's politics, it's lots of things.
It's like we were talking about with Lieutenant Griffin in Pentagon Wars. It's the intersection of a lot of different things that he's passionate about. Is just weirdly happens to be flags. Like, if you're lucky enough to identify those kinds of overlaps in your life, you really should dive into it and just pour yourself into that.
Agreed. Well, CGP Gray, thanks for being a listener to the Bad and Magic podcast.
Taking 100% credit for the fact that he's posting all these videos. You're welcome, Internet.
Josh, it's time for Bad at Technology.
Yes, this is my Bad at Technology.
I love it. You have some great ideas here. Let's talk.
Okay, I don't know where this... I do know where this came up, but I don't know the exact circumstances. Anyway, you, being the delightful and frustrating friend that you are, bought me this wonderful pair of earbuds a few weeks back that I've been using consistently every day for just like every moment of my life. I have those things in my ears. So thank you very much for those. They are fantastic. I love them very much. But it got me thinking about different, like, they're black. And I don't know what it was, but I was holding them in my hand. I'm like, these are black. And then I have a coworker who has the same earbuds, but they're red. And like, you can always tell when she has them in. And I thought that was interesting because I started thinking about hearing aids. My wife makes fun of me because I have actually lost a significant amount of my hearing from my time in the military. And so there are certain things that I just can't hear. Oh, actually, this is a tangent. We went to the Musical Instrument Museum with my entire family, okay? And one of the exhibits they had was everybody in your family puts on headphones, and they had a little documentary about hearing and how your hearing works. And it says over time, you start to lose your hearing as you get older. For example, we're going to play a tone that most people over 30 cannot hear. And presumably, they played a tone. And I'm like, that's ridiculous. They just kept it silent. Both my kids looked at me like, no, they played something. But they did that for a couple of different things, and I couldn't hear like half of them. And it was... Go ahead.
Okay, I want to stay down this tangent for a while. What happened to you in the military while you lost your hearing? Was it your flight training?
No, I don't... So my time flying Predator did have a negative impact on my hearing because they measured my hearing before and after, and I had lost a good portion of it on the fringes, the really low tones and the really high tones. And I think part of that is because in the control center that we were in, there was like 3 server racks full of computers that were running 24/7 behind us. And they had those loud, whiny like fans that are going all the time.
Yeah.
That's part of it.
I think I went and saw you in that office once. I'm like, man, I can't even hear myself thinking here. Let's go somewhere else to talk.
Yeah, there you go. There was another incident that happened while I was deployed where so this is the cool thing. I was deployed with the Army. And so, like, the Air Force lent me to the Army for 6 months to do Army stuff. So I was on an Army base with Army guys. And so random opportunities would pop up like, hey, LT, we're going to go do something awesome. Want to come with? I'm like, I don't have a boss here. Why not? Let me jump in the truck and let's go do something cool. And one of them was like, hey, we're going to the large arms range. So the Army has an arms range for, basically
like shooting a 50 caliber on the top of a Humvee.
Well, the normal range is for shooting like your AR-15 and like zeroing in your scope and making sure all your weapons work like they're supposed to. The large arms range, is for exactly that, for like the 50 cal and for like the grenade launchers, and they need to fire the heavy ordnance. And they don't have that on the base. They drive out in the middle of nowhere and shoot at the side of a mountain.
Okay.
So I went and was like, we're going to large arms range. Want to come? I'm like, yeah, I want to come to large arms range.
Me too.
And so I jumped in the back of a Humvee and we drove out, and they just, like, again, the Army, they just parked in the middle of nowhere. They just lined up their cars. Like somebody gave a hand signal. Everybody just like parked in a line. And I jumped out the back and I said, so when are we gonna, and I didn't get to finish my sentence because every machine gun in the convoy started shooting at the mountain at the same time, including the 50 cal that was 3 feet from my head.
Holy crap.
I didn't have my earplugs in yet. because I'm in the Air Force and I thought that we would get a countdown or we would have a safety inspection or somebody would say, hey, is everybody ready first?
Okay.
So
yeah.
I lost hearing in that ear for 3 full days. I was completely deaf in that ear for 3.
Someone was firing a 50 caliber right at 3 feet from your head.
Yeah, and I could not hear anything. Like, I cannot emphasize this enough. I was completely deaf in one ear for 3 full days. I was sitting in the command center when I literally heard a click and then all of the sound. It's like somebody hit the mute button on my hearing in that ear. I literally leapt up out of my seat and cheered. Now, imagine it's a room full of people working on computers.
That's kind of scary that your hearing just goes away and you don't know if it's ever going to come back.
Yeah, it was scary. And when it came back, I was elated, but it came back diminished quite a bit. And now, just recently, I developed tinnitus in my right ear, so there's always like that E going on. But anyway, so yes, I have experienced enough hearing loss that it's noticeable in my day-to-day life. And I was thinking about these earbuds that you got me that are black, and other people have multicolored ones.
Yeah.
But hearing aids are flesh tone. Not only are they flesh tone, but they have translucent wires and they tuck behind your ear. And it's this weird dichotomy where hearing aids is like, I'm saying I can't hear you, but I don't want you to know that. I want it to be unobtrusive as possible so you don't realize that I'm wearing a hearing aid. But if I'm wearing my earbuds, they're multicolored and they're blocking my entire ear canal. So it's like I'm saying I can't hear you and I don't want to hear you and I don't care.
Wow. What an interesting observation. So when you have a disability, you're trying to keep it a secret, but when you're basically saying, screw you, I don't want to hear what you got to say, you're doing it as loud as possible.
Yeah. Shouldn't it be the other way around? Shouldn't the earbuds, if I don't want to listen to you, shouldn't those be unobtrusive versus the hearing aids where it should be like a little signal like, hey, I don't have the best hearing. Try not to whisper when I'm not looking at you.
Okay, so you know that my wife is a certified
ALS,
American Sign Language interpreter, and part of that isn't just learning the language; it's also learning and being immersed in the culture. And there's a lot of the culture related to assisted hearing devices associated with this profession.
I can't listen to you because I said ALS, and I have to correct that to ASL.
Yes.
Those are different things. Okay, yes. So there's a lot of culture surrounding the hearing impaired. Please continue.
And one thing is, it's that there's a lot of cyclical, I don't know what to call it, just frustration surrounding whether or not you want people to know. Like if you're hard of hearing, the sign for that is to show one of those hearing aids that goes on the back of your ear.
Okay.
And if you're hard of hearing, do you want someone to try to accommodate you and maybe speak up in your presence? Or do you want to do your best and be treated like everyone else?
It should be a somewhere in the middle, right? Like, hey, you should be aware that I have, there is a limitation to my ability to understand you. So you make some accommodations. I will make a best effort. And between us, we'll get there.
I like that. And I think we're getting there. I think maybe the problems and the reason hearing aids have been getting smaller and more inobtrusive and flesh-colored are because there was negative stigma associated with that, and the technology was poor.
Yes.
And it's weird that as the technology's gotten better, they've also gotten less obtrusive. Maybe it's not as necessary as it used to be.
I don't know. Can I change the subject to
Sure.
a related topic? Here's my other question. I realized and I found out hearing aids are prescription devices. You
Right.
have to go to a doctor, and they have to do tests on you and then prescribe you a hearing aid.
Okay.
Why?
I got a theory on this, but play it all the way out.
Well, why are we gatekeeping devices that are helping people? Like, the same thing can be said for eyeglasses. I wear eyeglasses. My wife wears eyeglasses. My son now wears eyeglasses. Presumably my daughter's going to have to wear eyeglasses. Why do I have to go to a doctor? Instead, why can't I just do what they do and go to a rack of different prescriptions and put them all on until I'm like, this is about right, and then just grab those.
So let's take it one step farther, because we also use the word prescription to apply to hearing assisted devices, to visual assisted devices, and we also use it to refer to controlled substances, medications.
These are different, though. Hang on a second.
I know. No, I'm not trying to equate the three.
Okay.
Prescriptions, I see the reason for that. We've got professionals who have access to things that could be addictive or harmful or have harmful interactions. But none of that's true about hearing aids or glasses. None of it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to give you glasses that are too strong and like the sun's going to melt your retinas or something like that. They're just...
Or on the opposite side, if you're wearing the wrong prescription, it's literally painfully obvious within seconds of putting those glasses on.
Right. Now, I know other parts of the world don't control this as tightly as we do, and they probably think it's kind of weird that we do. There is one area that this has started to break down recently, and I noticed you didn't include it in your notes. What about orthodontia?
Oh, like retainers or braces and that kind of thing?
Yes. So we've kind of let that be exclusively the realm of professionals who are trained in musculoskeletal, facial, bone reconstruction, that kind of stuff. But recently, we've started to have like internet order do-at-home orthodontia, where you just like, they'll send you a little kit, you bite down on the thing, send it back to them, and then they send you a package of like 18 of those little plastic retainers that you stick in your mouth, and it'll straighten your teeth out over the course of a year.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's very interesting. I didn't know that.
So I think we're starting to make inroads. I don't know why optometry and audiology are still so insular.
Why are we gatekeeping devices that are only going to help people live a better life?
I think again, right at the fringe of this is those professionals justifying what it is that they provide.
Oof. Well, here's what really brought this to the forefront was when recently, I just mentioned my son is wearing glasses, right? We go to the optometrist once a year, my wife and I both, to get our checked out and get our prescription updated if we need to, or get new contacts, new glasses, or whatever. We also have been taking our kids every other year or so to make sure, because we know they're going to need glasses. Both my wife and I have glasses. It's a minuscule possibility that they won't.
Right.
So my son got to the point where he needs glasses for when he's in class or when he's working on a computer or something. Like outside doing stuff, he's fine, but if he's doing detailed work, he needs a little bit of correction. And I realized that there was two things here, is that there's the optometrist, but then there's also the sale out front where they're actually selling you the prescription eyewear. And I told my wife, like, let's just get the prescription and let's try to get something online. He's a kid. It's going to be a weak prescription. I don't want to spend $200 on a pair of glasses if we can get something for half of that online that he's going to break anyway.
Right.
And
they don't like you to break up their monopoly.
They push back on me so hard. I had to be rude to the guy. I had to tell him 3 times, and the third time was with some force. I'm not going to buy any glasses here today. Please stop asking me. Like, they were really trying to shove that down my throat. And the point that he was making was, oh, well, with your insurance, the deductible's only going to be like $100 anyway. Ben, we bought 2 pairs of glasses with all the upgrades for my son online for $80.
Yeah.
So,
well, good job. All right, I got a theory. I got an answer to your question.
Oh, okay.
Okay, there are some things, and maybe hearing and seeing are the things that where it could potentially be a public safety issue and we still require a gatekeeper. For instance, your driver's license might indicate whether or not you require prescription eyewear to see, and if the cops were to apprehend you driving poorly and you weren't wearing a prescription but your driver's license said that you should, then you would be in violation of the law for not bringing your faculties up to the minimum standard required for public safety.
Right, but then but that's on you as the person. What if I can't get my corrective lenses because they're being gatekept by expensive eyewear
Not
peddlers?
that. I'm saying, what if you could basically give yourself a prescription?
Well, that doesn't change the fact that you got pulled over for driving poorly. Now You're just, instead of the crime being you're not wearing your prescription lenses, it's just, well, you suck at driving.
Yeah, and I don't know how the first people decided, like, what you don't need to have perfect vision, but you need to have at least this good, because then when you're traveling this fast, you can read the signs at an adequate distance and make a decision in time.
It's really funny. This is another tangent. I think we're 3 deep now. But in Arizona, when I got my driver's license the first time when I turned 16, that license didn't expire until 2068. And yeah, you're leaning back in your chair like aghast because
I'm trying to think of how old you would be.
Very. The answer is very. I'd have been 80-something years old at that point. The idea is that Arizona has a large number of retirees that live here for the weather because they like it warm, I guess.
And apparently they have a powerful lobby.
They have a very powerful lobby, and they were sick of having their driver's licenses taken away because they failed the eye test at the DMV. Well, what's funny is they've since gone back on that. And most recently, when I went back to the DMV to get my latest driver's license with the little star on it so I could travel, actually that was so I could get to Magic 30. Now the expiration date on my old license was 2068, and now it went down to like 2030 something. So it's still like 15 years from now, but it's way sooner than it was before.
Okay.
This just goes back to like you're talking about. Like if the driver's license says you need corrective lenses, they're not talking to your optometrist. They're not asking for a doctor's note. They're not asking for your prescription. They're going to give you a simple eye test at the DMV, and they're going to say, read those letters. If you can't read this line, then you don't get a driver's license.
Right, but then now you need to go see a doctor to get a prescription that they say is good enough. But you're right, then you'll just have to get an eye test again, so why not just be able to get your own glasses?
Yeah, so like the same thing for glasses. Like I can see the idea for audiology where it's like, oh, well, if you've only lost certain tones, you don't want to amplify all sound coming into your ears because then that would be damaged, the rest of the range of your hearing. It's like, well, I feel like we have sophisticated enough technology where I could, those old blood pressure tests that you take at the grocery store?
Yeah.
That all the kids love because it was something to do while your mom was running errands?
I did.
I did that. Well, imagine that same device where you put on a pair of headphones that presumably you disinfect first, and then you hit a button, and then it says, all right, push this button if you can hear what I'm playing, and it just does the random tones that they do anyway.
The headset that you put on can detect your brain waves and detect if you heard it or not, like they test newborn babies.
That's really a test?
Yeah.
They can test babies that way?
Yep, they just stick electrodes on their head, play the noises in their ears, and test them.
Oh, well, it's a solved problem. You put a little helmet on at the grocery store, you push a button, you sit there for 30 seconds, and it says, oh, go get 4C. Down, it's 2 aisles over, $20.
Well, and they cost hundreds of dollars because you're subsidizing the whole profession.
Well, it's the thing, like the device itself is super cheap, but then the batteries are going to be stupid expensive. And that's another thing. Why do hearing aids have batteries when I can put my earbuds in a little USB-C charging case?
We're getting there. I don't know why. I don't know.
Oh, and I'm telling you, Ben, we are 5 years away from those earbuds. Like I said, they have the pass-through mode, or the active listening mode, where it'll amplify the sounds around you. Like, give it a couple years. I'll download an app, do a hearing test, and that pass-through mode will alter the sound waves coming in to go back into like the hearing range that I'm used to.
Yeah, and we were talking about whether or not you're good enough to drive. I mean, we're in that weird period where cars are fast enough to be dangerous, but not smart enough to drive themselves yet. But we're gonna go. We'll be through that in 20 years or so.
We're gonna get to the point where you can be fully disabled, blind, deaf, and dumb, and you can still summon an automated car to take you anywhere in the country, like totally on its own.
Yeah. All right, for rhetoric this week, Josh. Last time I introduced the persuasive appeals, which are under rhetoric. There are trees. One of the trees is the persuasive appeal, which consists of three sections: logos, pathos, and ethos. The appeal to reason, the appeal to emotion, and the appeal to character or ethics. Logos names the appeal to reason. Aristotle wished that all communication would be transacted only through this appeal, but given the weakness of humanity, he laments, we must resort to the use of the other two appeals. The Greek term logos is laden with many more meanings than simply reason, and the fact that the term is used for oration. So, logos is the appeal to logic.
Well, yes, and we talked about this before. That's exclusively what I use when I try to convince people of the correct course of action. I'm not good at making people feel good about that course of action if it disagrees with their proclivities. But at the same time, you can't deny every orator that I see on the TV, every talking head that wants to convince me of something, most of the time they are not using logos.
I feel like it would be I can see why you gravitated towards the profession of a certified public accountant. Your job is to understand the laws and regulations related to taxation and then cite your evidence to the person. Otherwise, they're not going to want to part with their money.
One of my favorite lines that I give to clients all the time when they ask me, what do you think I should do? And I say, that's not my realm. My realm as the accountant is to give you all of your viable courses of action. If you want to know which one you should take, go talk to a financial planner. Those are the salesmen. Those are the ones that are going to try to convince you which one's best.
You don't try to... Okay, I'm dubious about this, Josh.
I will admit, very rarely there's multiple courses of action, and I will say, and I go out of my way to make it clear, as an accountant, this is what I am telling you that you should do, or these are your courses of action. If it was me personally, nothing to do with what I just told you, this is probably the thing that you should do.
Yeah.
I have a good example of this. I had a client come in the state of Arizona. He was doing something wrong, and technically he owed a bunch of money to people. And I told him that, like, okay, as an accountant, I'm required to tell you that you are supposed to fess up to the government and tell them that you owe them all this money and then pay them all this money. As a person, I'm going to tell you to keep your mouth shut, not do stop doing this so you stop accruing more of it, but just be quiet about it and hope that the statute of limitations runs out before the government comes knocking asking for this money.
All right, what are you reading right now, Josh?
So I am still reading the first Law trilogy by Joe Abercrombie. I have moved on to the second book. I will say his titles are good. I like them. The title of the second book is Before They Are Hanged, and it's an abbreviation of a quote that he gives on the first page, and it says, "Bitter enemies will be forgiven, but not before they are hanged."
Yeah. All right. I read a nonfiction book, surprise, surprise. This one's called The Princess Diarist by Carrie Fisher.
Not The Princess Diaries, but The Princess Diarist.
Yes.
Presumably the Princess Diarist is also a princess.
This is some memoirs from her life, kind of scattered. I think it's her writing style. This wasn't her first book. I don't know why I picked this particular one. Did you know that Carrie Fisher and Harrison Ford had an affair during the production of the first Star Wars movie?
How could they not? Did you see the chemistry that they had in Return or in Empire Strikes Back?
Well, he was married and 10 years older or 15 years older than her or something like that.
It's Harrison Ford. Ben, if I had the opportunity to sleep with Harrison Ford at his peak, I would have.
Yeah. Okay. And that wasn't a huge revelation, I guess. Maybe some people, and she kind of talked about how people may or may not believe her or whatever, but she gave her own evidence and kind of justified why she waited so long to talk about it, because I think this was published several decades later. Yeah, 2016.
Yeah, when did she have this affair? That was not like...
Yeah, it was 1976.
Yeah, you're not allowed to have an affair. Like, we've come a long way when it comes to, like, victim blaming and, like, putting all of the onus, like, all of the negative aspects of this thing that happened would have gone to her, and all the positive ones would have gone to him. Now it's a lot more equitable.
Right. And even though she was very young when it happened, she went to great lengths to basically say this was my choice and I wasn't abused or anything like that.
Well, that's good of her to say that.
But
and, I said I would sleep. Again, this is not my brain, like the ALS-ASL thing. I said I would have slept with Harrison Ford at his peak. I also would have slept with Carrie Fisher at her peak. So let's get that on the record.
I figured that one went without saying. So one of the interesting things that she did in this is she talked about some of the aspects of being famous that I'd never, ever considered before. Like, there were some times in her career where she had lags between things that she was producing and not a real generous source of income, but she could basically, because of how big Star Wars had become, at any time she wanted, she could basically pump out autographs on things and get paid for it. She could go to gaming conventions, or she could just produce them, from scratch and do it. And she liked to refer to it using the terminology of prostitution.
She could go, I'm guessing she used the W word.
Yeah.
She could go W word herself out for some spending cash.
Yeah. And she talked about what it was like to go to one of those gaming conventions and have to have every person that comes up to you and who wants to tell you about, I don't know.
Nerds are the worst. Nerds are the worst people to have to talk to.
Sometimes she was, for a lot of them, she was their first crush. And she just talked about how every single one, for them, it was the first experience, even though for her, it was the same thing over and over and over again.
That's all right. Nerds. I'm calling to all my people out there. Like, stop doing this to celebrities. You have a unique bond with a person. It is one way. That is a parasocial relationship. They don't know you from Adam, and they shouldn't. Like, stop, trying to imagine, you're going to have Carrie Fisher sign your Princess Leia still in the box, and she's going to magically fall in love with you and, want to go for coffee afterward. That's just not going to happen.
Yeah. You kind of saw the rest of it. It was interesting, though, to hear from her perspective about how sometimes the stories she would hear were a bit touching or heartrending, and she would wish that she could give more, but she only had so much that she could give to someone in a few moments when there's 200 other people waiting in line.
That's got to be the weirdest freaking experience. Like, oh, I love you. You're so great. Wonderful. Can you please hurry up? I want to go eat a ham sandwich. Like, you are nothing to me.
Yeah, and that's the risk, is they're going to remember that encounter for the rest of their lives. So
she took the responsibility seriously.
Yes.
I see.
Yeah.
This is a stupid comparison, but I remember at Magic 30 back in October, we were standing outside waiting to get in on the second day, and you pointed out that standing behind me was a very famous Saffron Olive Seth. It's a very, I don't know his last name, but he's a famous guy in the Magic Gathering space.
He has a website and a YouTube channel called MTG Goldfish.
It's not his. He works there, but that's where he publishes, and that's what the kind of the brand that he's under. And I have a lot of things I could say about him and his playstyle specifically, but that we're not going to go there. But what happened was, I saw him, and I couldn't help but acknowledge the fact that I was seeing a celebrity.
Yeah.
But I also knew that he didn't care. He didn't care about what my feelings were about seeing him.
Right.
But I couldn't help it, and so I at the top of my lungs, because I'm kind of an ass.
It was great. Go ahead, repeat it.
And this is how I said the line that he uses to open every one of his things.
Probably better known as Saffron Olive.
And so while we're standing in this group of hundreds of people waiting to get into this building to play this game, I couldn't stop myself from shouting, "Holy crap, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive." And I limited my interaction with him to a smile and a wave, and that was it, because I knew he didn't care who I was.
Okay, I had two experiences with famous YouTubers at that same event. One was Seth. After you said that to him, as they finally opened the gates for releasing people into the venue that morning, we all got walking in. I found myself right beside him and walking the same pace. And I thought, why not? I'll take a few seconds and chat with him. Not like hold him up, but just, hey, since I'm beside him. I'm like, hey, Seth, I love your last video. The one where and I described the video. It was one that he'd done where he'd run a deck with Battle of Wits, where it's 250 cards, and then he matched up against a mill deck.
Yes, that was hilarious video.
It was fantastic, and I just told him that was great. It was hilarious. Thanks for publishing great content. I love your stuff. And he said thanks, and that was it. That was the end of our interaction.
Good. It needs to be one way. It's just like, hey, keep doing what you're doing. You're great. That's what you're, as a layperson. That's the only interaction you're allowed to have with a celebrity.
So there was another one that happened that was very, very different. I posted a photo of it, I think, but I sat down for one of my matches during the tournament, and we were waiting for it to start up, and the guy next to me looked and sounded familiar, and he had a play mat with a symbol on it that I thought I recognized. I'm like, you look really familiar. And he goes, just give yourself a minute, it'll come to you.
He said that line before.
Yes, he's a Canadian YouTuber that goes by the handle Nikachu. Okay. And he streams and he publishes. And in that event, he happened to actually make the top 8, and he was one of the beta drafters.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So while I'm sitting there next to him, and I think our matches both got over really fast, and we didn't have anywhere to go, so we were just sitting there next to each other, and we started talking about producing content online.
Oh, you're doing the thing I just told our audience not to do.
I know, but I wasn't holding him hostage. He was just sitting there next to me, and he wasn't going anywhere, and I wasn't either, and we just had a great chat. It was nice.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you had a nice chat with a content producer. And I'm recognizing now in this moment that, we are, I don't know, double E-list celebrities. I don't know how far down on the list we can be.
I'm perfect. I'm reusing that. Double E-list celebrities.
Listeners, if you ever find Ben in the wild, flag him down. I don't know, he'll work his time magic and stop the earth from rotating, and he'll have a meal with you. I guarantee he will, because that's the kind of person he is. If you see me in the wild, I will do my best. I recognize that we don't have a very large listener base. I will try to interact with you, but it's going to be a struggle.
Yeah. All right. Well, I can't recommend The Princess Diarist by Carrie Fisher, but it was interesting. Spoilers for Star Wars. Han and Leia, got together much earlier than you thought.
They had a couple of kids. One of them was Kylo Ren. Ended up killing Han Solo. Lots of spoilers this time. And then just Rey should have been the other twin that they had. There's so many things that they could have done that wouldn't have sucked, but it all sucked. So forget it. We're moving on.
All right. I don't want to do a board game Survivor today, Josh, but I think it's time that we do another bonus episode for our patrons on Patreon.
I think we need to. There is something that happened in Magic the Gathering recently that intersects with a lot of nerd culture and a lot of economics and a lot of like businessy type decisions.
Yeah,
that's really
it's fascinating. I want to play it out, but we won't subject our regular listening audience to it.
Well, no, hang on. We won't subject the whole thing, but let's spoil what it is to like just put that little piece of chum in the water, so that way maybe some sharks will come sign up for the bonus.
All right,
episodes.
Go ahead.
All right, so Magic the Gathering made a deal with, I guess it's Tolkien's estate. And they're doing a crossover promotion where they're making a bunch of Magic the Gathering cards in the universe of Lord of the Rings.
That will be modern legal.
That will be legal, and people will play Lord of the Rings cards and whatever. I don't care about that. What I do care about is that Magic is famous for a lot of rings. There's a lot of rings in Magic the Gathering, and funny enough, so is Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings has a lot of rings in it that they talk about. And they decided that they were going to print the One Ring. Like, they took the One Ring, and they made it a card, and they put mechanics on it, and it's a card in Magic the Gathering. But something that they do is they make a bunch of different versions of the same thing. And they decided they made one version of the One Ring that they decided they're only going to print one of. And so it's like got special art. It's written in the Elvish script, the entire card, so you have no idea what it actually does. And it's foil, and it's fancy, and they put a serial number on it. They do this from time to time where they'll serialize the cards where this is card, X of 250 that were printed or whatever. But this card is card 001 of 001. And so they put the Willy Wonka golden ticket, and they're going to put it in a random pack that anybody on the planet Earth can open. Okay. And that has such far-reaching ramifications that we have to discuss it in a bonus episode.
Yes. So if you're interested in hearing us talk about that and you want to get our take on that, or if you want to hear any of the other dozen or so hours of bonus content that we produced exclusive to our patrons, you can go to patreon.com/badatmagic. And for any level of support you sign up to, you can hear our content. If you want to just sign up for $1 of support and listen to all the bonus episodes and bail out, that's fine with me. I don't care. We appreciate our patrons. Thank you so much.
I just love the taste of a good shameless plug.
All right, Josh, you sent me a question about something that had kind of come. I grappled with it independent of you and then let it go behind me, and I thought it was in the past, and then you brought it up again. So for our main segment today, let's talk about the SEC ruling against the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints securities manager, Ensign Peak.
So Ensign, it's not Ensign Peak. It's like Ensign Peak. Ensign Peak Advisors, Inc. Okay. So before we get into this, let me give you a little background where I came from. Is that I saw this thing happen because I'm an accountant, and as you might know, I'm reading accountant news feeds now, and this just came across like, the SEC. And it was like, so I read the SEC report that they published, which is like one page on the internet. I read, well, not the report, but
the SEC is the Securities and Exchange Commission, and it's a bureaucracy under the Department of...
I think it's the Department of the Treasury.
Treasury? Okay.
I think the SEC was formed to regulate banking and finance in America.
Okay.
That's kind of the highest level thing of what they do. Their job is to make sure that Black Friday or Black Thursday or whatever it was that caused the great not the Great Recession, but the
Depression.
The Depression back in the 1920s.
Okay,
yeah.
so this is government regulators' attempt to try to just have some transparency and accountability in the securities and exchange space so that we don't have another Great Depression. What does that have to do with the church?
So what happened is as part of the law, as part of the Securities Exchange Commission doing their job, they have different levels and different requirements for financial institutions to report directly to them. If you own a private, actually not even a private, if you have a publicly traded company and you make over certain thresholds of income, you owe the SEC an official report signed by the CEO and the CFO every quarter. And you, the CFO and the CEO, can be personally financially liable for penalties if you falsify those kinds of documents. This is, again, it's just bureaucracy and regulation trying to make people more accountable for the crap that they do in the public space.
Yeah, so I looked this up and I tried to find out, first of all, what the threshold was, which apparently it's $100 million. So if you have a trading firm and you trade assets that
in
are
excess.
worth in excess of $100 million, then you owe this Form 13F to the Securities and Exchange Commission once a quarter.
And it's basically an informational form. There's no taxes due. They're not levying anything. It's not negative. There's nothing wrong with it.
Just so they can see what your company's worth and how much, and then generate reports and track it over time.
It's, hey, keep us in the loop. Like if you are trading money that is statistically significant to the gross national product of the United States, we would like to know what you are doing. That's
and then
kind
I guess
of where it
that
comes from.
allows them to track trends. It also gives public visibility. It gives congressional oversight.
It allows them to do the kinds of things that they did when they fined the Church of Latter-day Saints and the Ensign Peak Advisors, Inc. So what happened officially, like this is the official story on both sides. And this is the thing, Ben. There's the official story, and then as I did more and more research, there's an unofficial story that gets way more interesting. The official story is that Ensign Peak Advisors, Inc., is a nonprofit funds management company that is wholly owned and operated by the Church of Latter-day Saints.
Sure. They're professional, securities traders that exist just to manage the church's investment portfolio.
That's the idea, is that the church has a lot of assets and that they wanted to invest those assets. Okay, that's fine. I get it. The church is huge. You guys give money to the church, which we'll talk about later. They need to do something with that money. If it's all not spent right now, we're just going to keep it in a Chase high yield savings account? No. All right, listeners, I'm an accountant. If you have money, if you have more than 6 digits of money in a savings account, you're doing it wrong. Go talk to an accountant.
No. Go talk to
a financial planner.
A financial planner.
Certified financial planner. Plug for all my CFLs out there. CFPs? Whatever. I don't care. The idea is that the church itself created an investment firm to invest their funds. I have no problems with that. SEC has no problems with that. The problem comes with this is that we'll get into the reasons why or whatever. I'm not going to make any qualitative. I'm not going to make any qualitative discussion. I'm going to say quantitative only right now. I'm not going to get into it.
I have a question for you because I didn't look this deeply into the part of it. It sounds like you did. Are you saying that Ensign Peak Advisors has no other customers?
I don't know that part.
Okay,
I don't know that part.
You made it sound like they did. I thought they were an independent. I thought they were hired by the church, not created by the church.
From what I understand, it is operated by the church. That is the verbiage that I've read. I don't know what that means. Owned/operated. Let's not quibble about the details.
Well, the only reason I'm bringing that up is in the SEC press release, they specified part of the wrongdoing and they divided it up.
Well, and the fact that they assigned any blame whatsoever to the Church of Latter-day Saints is the big deal to me. But
sure.
We'll get there.
Okay.
Qualitative only. I'm trying to say qualitative only for the moment. No, not quantitative. Quantitative. No, there's no judgment here. I'm saying what happened. What happened was that Ensign Peak Advisors they created 13 LLCs that were created in various states around the country. Like all the LLCs were based, quote unquote, in different states. Each of these LLCs had leadership or managers that were put in charge, but they answered to Ensign Peak, like 100%. These people just did what Ensign Peak told them to do. And then Ensign Peak took the assets that the church had given them to invest, broke it up reporting-wise amongst these 13 LLCs so that they still had to report. But when they reported, it showed that the assets were owned by these LLCs instead of the Church of Latter-day Saints. That's one thing. Now, the second thing, in 2019, I think the SEC came down and said, hey, you're doing this wrong because all of these LLCs are effectively owned and operated by you. And so then Ensign Peak changed how they were reporting, and they gave an aggregated report, but it still listed 13 separate entities on this one. Instead of giving 13 reports, they gave one report that listed 13 different entities. The idea here is that they were showing the assets that were wholly owned by the Church of Latter-day Saints as if they were owned by these 13 separate, essentially shell companies. And this is what the SEC had a problem with. It's like, you are doing this because the fact that Ensign Peak Advisors essentially owns and operates these LLCs, you're being disingenuous with your reporting. This is the only problem they had. They didn't say anything like, oh, well, you're hiding assets or you're committing tax fraud. No, they didn't say they were doing anything illegal. They were just reporting these assets incorrectly for a long period of time. And that's where the fine came in. The SEC fined Ensign Peak Advisors $4 million for doing these reports wrong for all these years. And more interestingly, they fined the Church of Latter-day Saints $1 million for allowing Ensign Peak Advisors to report them incorrectly over the course of these years. And
so
now,
all in all, there was a $5 million fine levied on the church and their portfolio advisors, and they paid the $5 million.
Not for doing anything wrong, but for essentially clerical mistakes. Like, hey, you're being slightly disingenuous with how you are reporting this money. Please do it differently. We told you before, you didn't get it, so we're going to give you a fine. And from both the perspective of both of the organizations that are involved, that specific matter is closed. The SEC fined them. Presumably, Ensign Peak is now reporting the correct way, these same assets to the SEC the way that they're supposed to have been this entire time, and nothing else is going to come from it. But it broke as news because, well, and this is where the qualitative question comes in. It's like, well, hang on a second. Why was this even a thing? Why does Ensign Peak Advisors exist? And why did they create 13 shell LLCs to distribute these funds?
Yeah, sure. Okay. So good job so far, just sticking to like the talking points from the SEC's press release and the church's press release. What was your impression when you saw this and just absorbed a few of the initial details?
So from a layperson, the outside perspective, and this is why I texted you, because you got the inside scoop, man. Aren't you on the council? Don't you get all these briefings and stuff?
No, man, I got the same press release.
No, come on, you get the quarterly newsletter. I know what's going on.
I've got my own opinion about what's going on here. I'll tell you in a minute.
Fair enough. So what got me interested in this is I started doing more research. I'm like, okay, this is weird, because like people are trying to make this like, oh, this is big news. And then as I keep reading, it's like, oh, well, this first came to light when somebody tried to whistleblow the Ensign Peak Advisors back in 2019. It's like, wait, what is this now? Somebody tried to whistleblow? And it turns out there is a guy. Let me find his name because I wrote it down, but I took way too many notes.
Okay. Now, while you're looking this up, you got to be really careful, because anybody like this that has a bone to pick against a church probably has something else going on besides simply wanting to be a studious taxpayer.
And you know what, Ben? I completely agree. People that come out vocally against organizations like this are on the far end of the bell curve, and I'm totally cognizant of that.
Okay.
Here's my thing. I can't find the guy's name, but I wrote down the stuff that he put out. In 2019, he tried to blow the whistle to both the IRS and to the Senate, not on the LDS Church, but on Ensign Peak. He was saying, because he was an investment manager at Ensign Peak, like he worked at that investment firm, okay, as an employee, and he thought that the firm was miscategorizing the funds that they were receiving as charitable. He's like, what are you talking about? There's 13 LLCs. They all have billions of dollars. This is not charitable donations. All these earnings, everything that we have here is supposed to be taxable. And everybody kept telling him, no, it's fine. It's all charitable giving. But that's when he started trying to blow the whistle. Like, these guys are trying to dodge taxes on billions of dollars worth of assets. But my interpretation of everything that I read from him was that he didn't know the whole story. He didn't realize that these LLCs were just the shell companies that they are for the LDS funds. So yes, Ensign Peak was still doing. Again, I'm not gonna say anything like the LDS Church did anything wrong. They are reporting and doing everything that they thought was supposed to be correct. This guy didn't have the whole story, and he thought that because he was missing key pieces, that this was a problem, and he tried to blow the whistle, which is why nothing really happened or nothing really came from that.
Okay. So let me give you a little bit of backstory.
Oh, dear.
So go back to the mid-'90s. You can see in the show notes there on our notes page, and I'll put it in the show notes for the podcast. You can see the cover of Time magazine.
Mm-hmm.
That's from 1995.
I could have sworn that was way more recent than that.
No, that's from 1995. So here's the thing about this. It's the cover of Time magazine. It shows a picture of the Salt Lake Temple, and it says Mormons Incorporated: The Secrets of America's Most Prosperous Religion.
Ooh, you are already setting the groundwork. Like I can feel you digging the trenches with that shovel. Go ahead, go for it.
So here, when this came out, the prophet of the church decided, in the name of being more open to the public, he was just going to take all of this on. So it was Gordon B. Hinckley was his name, and he was just a dynamic leader of the church. And he went on 60 Minutes with Mike Wallace and did interviews with newspapers and for magazines and stuff like that. And reporters are digging and be like, why's your church got so much money? With the assumption that, like, if you have money, shouldn't you be doing charitable things with it?
Well, why should a church be amassing wealth, I think is the question.
Yes. Yes. So that was the question, and that was the allegation that happened. This setting up of Ensign Peak, which then created like 2 or 3 layers of separation from the church from its investments. If you look at the press release that the church released when they paid the SEC fine, they said, hang on, let me bring it up here. Since 2000, Ensign Peak received and relied upon legal counsel regarding how to comply with its reporting obligations while attempting to maintain the privacy of the portfolio.
So I also read the LDS press release that they put out on this, and it's a 1-page thing, and it says it does the thing that I did earlier. It sticks strictly to the quantitative facts. This is what happened. Sure. We are paying the fine. We thought we were complying. Apparently, the SEC disagreed. We are now complying with what they're saying. We are doing everything technically correctly. No,
you missed. There's a qualitative piece here. While attempting to maintain the privacy of the portfolio.
Yeah, and
this was our motivation. This is why we gave it to this other company who was running these other companies.
And this is the point that this whistleblower tried to, or no, not him, but somebody else brought up. I keep reading this quote, and I don't know who it's attributed to, but somebody in accordance with all this, because we haven't said this amount, but the SEC found that in 2018 the holdings were about $32 billion.
Right.
So across these 13 LLCs, that's just invested.
So a $5 million fine is literally a slap on the wrist.
Yes, this is all right. I'm an accountant, and I have to make this distinction. The church doesn't have $32 billion in assets. The church has $32 billion in investment assets. That's just the stuff that they have invested with this company. That doesn't include any of their real property. That doesn't include any of the equipment that they maintain at every church around the world. That doesn't include any of the operating funds that they have to maintain for all the staff everywhere. This is just the extra that's lying around, $32 billion. And the quote that I kept reading in all of the admittedly sensational news articles is, why would anyone continue to tithe 10% of their income and go without when the church has $32 billion sitting around not doing anything?
Okay, are you asking me that question?
That's what I'm not asking you that question.
No,
yet.
But here we are, Ben and Josh on the Bad at Magic podcast talking about this.
Well, I'm deliberately trying not to ask you that question directly right now because I want to talk about this specifically, but then there's a question that I have to ask you later that is tithing, and that's a whole other thing separate from this issue.
But it's definitely related. So I'm laying some groundwork, some historical, some DNA stuff for the church. So one is this thing. Now the church wants to be known for worshiping Christ. They don't want to be known for amassing wealth. They have their reasons for doing it. It's baked into their DNA, and I'll tell you what it was. When the church was founded in the early 19th century in the eastern United States, they were chased from place to place by angry mobs until they finally holed up in the mountains and were almost wiped out by the U.S. sent the actual army out there.
Well, arguments are that you were a dangerous cult that was going to spread and start having way too much influence in public affairs, which
here's what happened. At each step of the way, in Kirtland, Ohio, in Independence, Missouri, in Nauvoo, Illinois, in Winter Quarters, Nebraska, and then in Salt Lake City, each time they moved, they basically had people kick them off their land, and they retained the debt and lost the asset.
Okay.
And so early on in the church, the saints just had this crippling amount of debt that was unfairly levied upon them through mob violence.
Okay, let's keep words like unfairly out of it, but I understand they had debt that they needed to pay.
I really want to insist on the word unfairly.
Well, I don't know.
They were chased off for property they held the deed for.
Well,
by angry people with guns. That's unfair.
We don't have the story of the angry people with guns, so I don't want to say unfairly because that's assuming they did the wrong thing. I don't know that story, so I don't want to leverage that onto them. They had debt. I'm fully admitting to that.
Okay, but then they would take possession of their lands that they didn't. What? Okay. All right.
I don't know enough of the history, Ben. I'm sorry. I'm trying to stay away from
It's
absolutes.
Okay. So they had a lot of debt, and it was crippling to the early growth of the church. It was problematic in a lot of ways.
Okay.
And so once the church finally got out of debt, they took on a firm and lasting policy of keeping enough to maintain their operating costs, but always putting some away for a rainy day.
I kept reading the rainy day verbiage on all the different
I'm
LDS
telling you why
sources.
that's so deeply baked in the DNA of the organization. That was the problem.
This is one thing. As I was reading more and more of the LDS sources, like multiple pages, different like vectors, all coming from official LDS channels, kept showing the same verbiage over and over, which of course makes my spidey sense go off. But one of those repeated verbiages was the rainy day fund. We want to prepare for the future.
Yeah. And anyone that's Christian knows that one of the central tenets of Christian theology is the prophecy of some kind of great reckoning that will happen at some point in the future.
Okay. Yeah, and yes, that's one of the things that they're planning for the coming and all of that. But
right.
Presumably, if the coming happens, currency wouldn't have any real value. But that's a whole different discussion.
Right. But it isn't just currency. As you know, an investment portfolio isn't just currency. It's real property and other things. But
you can't invest a real property, dude. Like that.
That's why the LLCs are geographically separate.
No, the LLCs are geographically separate so that it's just spreading it super thin. So no state.
Do you know that for sure? Because I don't think that's true.
You can't invest real property. If you tried to report like land as an investment, actually that's not true either. All right. I don't have enough research done on why the LLCs are in different states. Let's just table that.
Okay. I get that it just looks like money laundering. Like, all right, we'll do one over here, one over there, and then nobody will know what's going on.
That's money laundering is different. This is hiding assets, which is different.
Okay. So there's the DNA of wanting to just never have to be enslaved by debt again. There's the publicity that comes from having achieved financial independence and then getting all this attention that's focused on the money rather than the doctrine and the theology. And so then that led to this standing up of this thing that, like you said, probably had the intent to hide the assets. It says right here in their press release, while attempting to maintain the privacy of the portfolio.
Well, and there's a lot of different things that come out of this, and a lot of the different like the quotes that are coming out. And it's very like everything that's coming out of the church specifically is we complied with the laws to the best of our ability based on what we understood at the time. And I'm not arguing that. But what I am arguing is, this is my take on it, is that there's no question of legality. Like they're doing their best to comply with the laws, which is what the church should do. That's the correct thing to do. But the question becomes one of morality. Like, yeah, you did the right thing, but at what point did like somebody came to you and it's like, all right, we're going to take the church's investment portfolio. We're going to divide it amongst these 13 separate LLCs. Well, hang on a second. Why? Oh, so not any one of them meets different reporting thresholds. We're going to distribute it out and kind of hide it this way.
Yeah, but none of them are less than $100 million. They still have to report to the SEC. What they're being criticized for is that they were reporting as if these companies were separate rather than all part of Vens and Peak.
Right, or all part of the LDS church in large. So The question becomes, why the lack of transparency? Like, if you are doing the right thing, if you are convinced that you are doing everything that is correct, why are you hiding it?
So you're asking me that question because I thought I just answered it. It's because they want to have it, but they don't want that to be the thing people think about when they think about the church.
I think those are disparate things, though. I think you can be rich and do the right thing. Like, those aren't mutually exclusive.
Not everyone thinks that. There's a lot of criticism about it, and you could sense that in some of the stuff that was released.
Okay, but then in what sense of the word? Like, if you can't please everyone. If there's people that are going to give you crap for hiding the assets, and there's people that are going to give you crap if you're fully transparent, then you cannot take that opinion into your thought processes when you're trying to make decisions. We're not going to be able to please everyone. So what is the correct thing to do?
Yeah, I think just the full transparency thing is, and I'm sure that's how it will be going forward. They got 20 years of privacy, and that's over.
You see, you think that, but then the next one of the searches that I was doing, and I dug for a while, was I was trying to find, okay, well, every publicly traded company on the planet has to submit their full financials, profit and loss, and their balance sheet to the SEC, which becomes public knowledge. Any publicly traded company in America, you can go to the SEC's website and you can find out exactly how much money they made last year. The LDS Church is not on that list. The LDS Church's finances, because it's a nonprofit, are 100% private, and they have not taken the step to make it public.
All right, are you ready to go down the wormhole of separation of church and state?
Ooh. I don't know if I was armed for this discussion, but I'm excited for it. Go for it.
Okay, so the First Amendment of the United States Constitution begins with, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof.
That's completely crap because we do it all the time. The fact, what separates a church from a cult is their tax-exempt status.
Yeah, okay, so, even the freest, respecting an establishment, the establishment clause of the First Amendment there was so unclear about what that meant. You could tell the founders had an intent, but no one knew. And so there's been no less than a dozen cases that have gone before the Supreme Court, four major ones, one in 43, one in 63, one in 71, and one in 2000, all regarding just sorting out what the Establishment Clause means.
Well, all right. Okay. So then if we don't understand what the Establishment Clause means, then what's the next step? What's the next thing we need to talk about?
So Lyndon B. Johnson in 1954, to great controversy, added to the IRS Code 501c3 what was called the Johnson Amendment. He proposed it went through Congress and got passed and got added to the IRS tax code, which basically says charitable organizations, including churches and affiliate groups, are forbidden from, and it had a list of three main things, like six, but it's really only three. They can't privately benefit the leaders of the church. They can't participate in lobbying of any substance, and they can't finance political campaigns.
Yeah, okay.
And these lead down problematic paths of others.
Oh, I'm sure that none of that ever happens now with any religious affiliated group at all.
To try to understand this, the IRS published IRS Publication 1828. I read Revision 8, 2015. It's 40 pages. It's pretty digestible. Link in the show notes. It's understanding what it means to be a religion with respect to the United States tax code.
This is why I love being an accountant, because you get legislative that says, oh, churches are charitable giving. And now, because it says churches in that one line thing, like if you give money to a church, is considered charitable. Okay, well, everybody knuckle down. We're staying here the whole weekend because we have to write down on a piece of paper what's a church.
Yeah. So that was already kind of done, and the Johnson Amendment established what kind of things that you could do, because there were problems with the government getting involved with taxes related to churches that would making people afraid that they might restrict religious expression, and some people were thinking that.
Well, I mean, it gets so entangled because what's religious expression that doesn't involve political lobbying?
Okay, so what you got right to the heart of it. What does it mean? What does any of this mean other than whether or not this entity has to give money to the government?
Well, and on the flip side, what does this mean? Like, if me as a taxpayer, can I give my money to this person and it be tax deductible versus giving it to this person and it being tax deductible? I am armed for that conversation.
Yes. Okay, so in addition to the First Amendment, then there was the 16th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution that said Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes on income from whatever source derived without apportionment among the several states and without regard to any census of enumeration. It basically just said we can tax anybody, anywhere, anytime we want.
And presumably now, like the charitable giving that is received by by LDS Church, which is given to Ensign Peak to invest, none of that is taxed. That is all tax-free. However, the earnings that they make on the investments, all the income that they're racking up from the fact that they have $32 billion, and if they did stick it into their 1% Chase high yield savings account, that's $300 million a year that they do have to pay taxes on.
Yes. So not only that, but the church is a worldwide church. In fact, there are more members of the church outside the United States of America than there are inside, and all those different countries have their own tax laws.
Yeah, so I agree. There was actually a list. One of the sources that I came by is some countries require the churches to report how much they receive in tithing as part of their tax filings. And in Australia, they make it public knowledge. And it was like 2022, I think Australian LDS members donated $32 million to the church.
So if you'll indulge me for a second, The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints pays all taxes required by law. Worldwide, the church and its affiliates pay applicable taxes and other governmental levies. In the United States, where churches and other nonprofit organizations are generally exempt from federal and state income tax, the church pays taxes on any income it derives from revenue-producing activities that are regularly carried on and not substantially related to its tax-exempt purposes.
I think that exact same quote also copy-pasted in here because it just goes back to what I was talking about before. The LDS Church has been very, very clear. We are complying with all of the laws that we are required to comply with.
Okay, I want to give this a personal note, and that is amongst the myriad of duties that a member of a lay clergy could have in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, one is to be a local financial clerk. And I have held that duty.
Man, I was going to ask you this question because I saw on the website as I was digging into tithing, you don't just go online and tithe to the church and stuff. No. You tithe to your local guy. You have to give cash monies or some kind of value to a person that is...
Yes, so up until 10 years ago, it wasn't even possible to pay online or pay centrally. So what you would do is you would take an envelope with the receipt in it that meets all the requirements of the IRS tax code, saying who it is paying, when you're paying it, who you're paying it to, and then they give you a receipt and you hand it to them.
That's insane. Absolutely insane.
It's kind of like passing the collection disc, but it's not anonymous, and you get a receipt.
It's not anonymous, and it's way more money.
Yeah. Okay. We can get into the doctrine of the tithe earlier, but the word tithe means tenth.
Which, okay.
Later.
We've been talking a lot of IRS tax code. We're going to lose some people when we're talking about, what's the meat and potatoes of what you're getting at here?
Okay. What I'm getting at here is that... Well, I just want to indulge me for one more minute. So when I was a financial clerk for the church, we would collect all those envelopes. They had to go to a member of the local clergy, and then at the end of the meeting, then they would hand us all the envelopes. Then we would open them, count them, and verify that what the person had written on the receipt was the same as what was included in the envelope, note any discrepancies, and work those out. And then we would immediately input that into the system, and then whether it was cash or checks or coinage, then we would wrap all that up in a deposit and take it to a local bank where we held an account, make the deposit, and update the system. And then we had to conduct audits. So I've done all of this and seen how consistent and rock solid the procedures are on a local level as far as maintaining continuity.
I just rolled my eyes super hard because yes, one of the things that I was tested on, I had a whole test to become a CPA about internal controls and auditing. That's something that accountants do is you have people in your organization that you may or may not trust that are going to be handling cash that is not theirs. How do you set up a system to make sure that they don't steal from you? And yeah, there are ways that you can do that. And a lot of things that you're talking about, having the people that record it, being different from the people that actually deposit it, the people that receive it being different than the people that deliver it. All of this is important internal controls to make sure that the organization of the church isn't defrauded.
Yeah. Okay. So, and I know all that from firsthand experience is all I'm saying. Okay. So are we going to get to the tithing thing here?
This is my question, Ben. So we've laid a lot of groundwork here. Okay. I know you're a very devout person. You're a very good person. Why would you I know you're devout, but I also know that you're a logical person. I know that you're a smart person and that you make good decisions. Why are you there are so many requirements on you as a father and as a provider for your family.
Okay, you're making an assumption. Just ask me outright. But
why would you
give 10% of your income to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints?
No, I'm not asking you that question. I'm not asking you that question at all. I am assuming that you already do. I know that you do.
Okay.
So my question is, why would you keep going without to give to an organization that has insane amounts of money to the point that they have to invest billions of dollars? The interest that they are earning on that alone is far more than anything that you could ever earn in your life. Why would you keep giving to them?
Okay. Great question. Wrong question.
Oh, Lord. And I'm going to get some moralistic argument that doesn't make any sense.
We're going to ethos here. It's not logos. I don't tithe to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints the business with $32 billion in investments. I tithe to the God of heaven.
Okay, I'm going to pause you right there because the next very hard search that I made was, can I give my tithing directly to the needy or directly to a charity instead of to the church? And in every single direct source document from the church that I could find, it's no. Thou must tithe to the church for it to count.
Yeah. Okay. I'm assuming in some of these things you looked at, you also saw how many hundreds of millions of dollars the church gives in relief efforts and those kinds of things.
Okay. Hang on a second. At no point have I made the point that the Latter-day Saints aren't doing good works. At no point. I am not making that argument, nor will I ever. However, what I am saying.
I get it. But the law of the tithe isn't that I get to decide what happens with it. It's that I relinquish control of it.
But wouldn't you feel better? Like if you're deriving your economic value from tithing as like, oh, this is going to the needy. This is going to do good things. Wouldn't you feel better if there wasn't a middleman that had $32 billion investing, earning interest? Instead, wouldn't you just want to give your tithing to that poor homeless guy that lived across the street from you when you were deployed in Florida?
Okay. I can do that too.
The church says you can't. Every source document I found says, no, you have to tithe to the church.
No. But I did give to that homeless guy, but I also paid 10% to the church.
You're killing me, Smalls. Okay. I don't know. Here's the thing, Ben. It's honestly, I swear to you, this whole thing started very innocently with me. I want to understand more about tithing. It really was. Yeah. The more research I did was the more heebie-jeebies I got with the verbiage that the church was feeding me as I was trying to educate myself on tithing. Here, I've got a couple of quotes directly from their website that I want to read out loud, okay? Because to you, they probably sound fine. To me, they sound absolutely insane. And I keep wanting to say bat crap crazy, but I can't say the S word, so I'm suppressing that. For members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, paying tithing and other donations to the church is a sacred privilege. These are words that they have on their website. A sacred privilege to give them money? Okay, the next one. Church members know that when they pay donations to the church, the Lord has promised he will, quote, open you the windows of heaven and pour you out a blessing that there shall not be room enough to receive it, end quote. That's Malachi 3:10.
That's in the Old Testament.
And that's straight out of reparations and not reparations, but...
Well, what does the church have to offer if they aren't going to do that? Give me your money and you'll receive blessings from God.
Another quote. From ancient times, faithful children of God have showed their gratitude and obedience by paying tithing. That's the word. The obedience sent me down like immediately alarm bells went off to the point where I had to close the browser before I was being indoctrinated.
Yeah. I get that from the perspective of a non-believer, all of these appeals to faith and the existence of God and stuff would be the most alarming thing to you. I don't know how to overcome that.
And this is why I wanted to have this conversation with you because I knew that my logical perspective on this entire, this just brought it to the forefront. The fact that the church has $32 billion sitting around doing nothing. Logically, to me, that means, okay, the church doesn't need my money. They have more money than they know what to do with.
I get it, but you're asking a different question. I want you to understand how fundamentally different the questions are. My question is, do I desire to obey God and do I want his blessings? As opposed to, do I think that the church needs my money?
But this is the thing. The blessings of God can only come to you if you give a certain percentage of your income to the church. That doesn't make any sense, man. That's the kind of stuff that the Catholic Church was doing back in the Dark Ages when people were paying their way into heaven.
I guess it could sound like that, but it isn't promising specific blessings.
No, it's even worse. It's saying it's like buying a church or a God lottery ticket. Maybe you'll be blessed, but you'll have a better chance if you give us your money.
That's funny that you say it like that because it's kind of like that. It isn't a specific blessing. There's no promise that if you pay. And one of the questions I saw, even on one of the church facts, was like, well, do you ask people in poor areas to give 10% of their money to the church?
Yes, they do. They absolutely do, which is, again, that's the part that sounds insane. It doesn't matter what your income is. 10% of it needs to come to us.
It sounds insane if you don't believe in God.
Okay. Now, let me ask you my next question that I hope you're unprepared for because I want the real truth, okay?
Okay.
Why is it that you come on this podcast with me every 2 weeks and you will rail for hours against bureaucracy and all of these people making group decisions and not allowing like the true good to happen, but you will give a blank check to the church to just, yes, here is 10% of my livelihood. Here's 10% of the blood, sweat, and tears that I have earned over the course of my life. Do what you think is right, and you have no questions to ask them.
Okay. You've talked frequently about how you ask me, like, you say I'm a good person, or you say, oh, of course you did that because that's the kind of thing you would do. I give myself to the church in that same regard, and I believe that the other people that I'm giving the money to are as well. And I hold that in high esteem.
So it's not the organization itself. You see the LDS Church as a group of people all striving for the same purpose.
Yes.
Then why did they form 13 shell LLCs to hide their assets?
Well, obviously they're not going to do that anymore.
Oh, dang, we got caught.
I told you why. I've quoted it 3 times to protect the privacy of the organization.
Because we didn't want you to know how much money we had. That's what they're saying.
Yes, it's because people ask these kinds of questions. And if you ask it from a secular perspective and say, you got poor people in Mexico getting by on $100 a week, and you're asking them to give $10 to the church, and you got a $32 billion war chest over here, why don't you take some of that money and give it to them?
Yeah.
That's the question,
That's
right?
my question, yes.
Yeah, I'll tell you the answer. It's because God exists, and he expects all of his children to sacrifice something for their belief in him, and you can't get the blessings from God unless you sacrifice. No matter who you are, no matter how wealthy you are, no matter where you live on earth.
You sacrifice countless hours of your time waking up early every morning to go teach kids the true belief and the true faith in God. Why is that not enough? Why does he need to dip into your bank account too?
When I turned 19 years old, I went and spent 2 years of my life for every waking hour. Guess how much of my life that was up to that point?
Yeah, that was a statistically significant percentage of your life.
10%.
Oh, son of a... you got me. Yeah, it was... They tithe your life. So why... So you're already giving. You are giving more of yourself than any logical person should. Why give more? Why dip into the material plane? And that is... Like I said, blood, sweat, and tears. Like I constantly...
I like that you called it that.
I frequently talk about the fact that the only thing that I have in my life that is truly mine is my time. And I trade a portion of that as little as possible to my employer so I can get the real hard currency that I need to live a good enough life for my children. Why, then, should I take any of that? Because that is the most precious thing I have. I traded my time for this. Why would I give it to you who already has more than you know what to do with?
Yeah. That would be the right question if God didn't exist and I didn't believe that he wasn't behind the organization.
But that's another thing that I'm getting hung up on. Why do you believe God wants your money?
I don't think he wants my money.
Then stop giving it to him.
No. I like how you disambiguated it and you turned it back into blood and sweat.
Yeah, that's the difference.
That's what God wants.
Well, then stop giving him your money and volunteer more. But that's not going to satisfy the church, is it? Because you can't. No. Because I did the research. You can't. I
don't get to make that choice.
You can't give service. You can't give in-kind tithing. It has to be your money. The church even has a whole website about how this blew me away. The church accepts stocks, bonds, and other securities that are marketable immediately, and some marketable real estate. There's another quote. The church normally discourages paying tithing or making other donations in kind. It is preferable for members to dispose of the property themselves and then pay the tithing and make other donations in cash. The church specifically does not want you to serve them. It does not want you to give them things of value. It wants your money.
Okay, I assume you dug down into and read some of the things that they spend the money on.
I tried, but they don't publish any of their finances.
But they do publish a great deal of the actual work that they do.
I kept getting the same party line copy-pasted from one website to another, is that they do godly works all over the world. Ben, you do not have to sell me on this. I know that the church itself is doing good things. My problem.
I have greater faith in my money that I give to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints going to help the poor and the needy and the disadvantaged and doing good things around the world than any other organization I could possibly give to. And I do give to others as well.
The church doesn't give you health insurance. The church doesn't provide law enforcement. The church doesn't provide a necessary infrastructure for you to continue your existence on this planet. Why do they deserve more of your money than the U.S. government?
I'm not giving it to a church. I'm giving it to God.
You're not giving
the vehicle.
No, sir. BS, sir. God doesn't come down and collect your tithing every whatever it is, every month or every 2 months. It's a guy at the church. You are handing it to a person who is part of a bureaucracy. I understand that, yes, this whole organization, the intent is that they are serving God and the prophet receives the word through prayer, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm abstracting all that away.
But when I was the guy collecting the checks and cashing them and turning them into the bank, I felt a sacred responsibility.
Yeah, but
for taking
your name tag,
mite.
But it said Ben Rich on your name tag, not God. You're not giving your money to God.
Of course not.
You're giving it to another bureaucracy that's doing different things. Yes, they're doing things that you value, but they're still doing whatever they want with it.
Well, if we can have money be the question here, but it could be anything that a religion requests or requires of someone. It says there's an invisible God, that he exists. I'm speaking on his behalf. I'm asking you to do, give, have, say something. Do you believe in him or not? Now's the trial of your faith.
The trial of your faith is to give me money?
That's one. Like you said, there's lots of trials.
But this one is not optional. If you're a member and you're a good member, you tithe. This is.
What do you mean by not optional? We're not.
If you didn't tithe, what would happen to you?
If I did, first of all, it's completely self-reported. So I report whether or not I have. They don't check my income statements or anything.
Do they? Are you sure?
No.
There's zero.
I'm sure because I've been on the other side of this.
So the church exerts zero pressure on its members that don't tithe.
No, you didn't let me finish. Okay. I was waffling a little bit. There are portions of church worship where it's mandatory that you're a full tithe payer, but it's self-reported. Oh. So if I report that I'm a full tithe payer, then I can worship in the temple. But if I'm not a full tithe payer, I can't worship in the temple.
They are they're leaning so hard. All right, so here's the thing. This argument that they're making has absolutely no basis in logos whatsoever from my perspective. They are leaning so hard into the pathos that you don't even question it.
I think you're right, but I don't disagree with what you're saying. I don't. This really is about if an invisible God exists or not. If it isn't, it's just a scam.
From my perspective, yes. With my baseline assumption being that there is no God, then this does look like a scam. I'll tell you right now, if I was a member of a completely a-religious organization that I had to pay dues to, say I belong to a country club at a golf course, and they said, hey, the funds are running low, we're going to need everybody to kick in a little extra cash, and then I found out that they had, hundreds of thousands of dollars in a bank account when they were telling me that they needed my cash, I would be very upset.
Yes.
But your organization, your church, gets a complete pass. It's like, yes, the church has so much money that we can invest $32 billion because we don't have anything else to spend it on. All of our operational needs are met. All of our real estate demands are met. Everything else that we are trying to do to bring good to the world is been satisfied. And we have $32 billion extra. And we still want 10% of every penny you make. That is absolutely crazy.
You can see why they wanted to keep this private. They disambiguate it completely.
Well, but
because that's what it's about. It's about individual faith. It's not about organizational coherency. It's not about having a organization with money. It's about being a person who made a sacrifice to God.
Yeah, but that's the thing. This is why I started asking the question, can I make that same sacrifice to God directly? Can I cut you, the LDS Church, out as a middleman? And the answer is no. Not only is the answer no, but they want me to sell my stuff at a garage sale. They don't want my stuff. They want me to sell my stuff and then give them the cash instead.
Yeah, but okay, so I was avoiding this, but I want to go deeper on this. We believe that God exists and that he set up a church and that this is his church and that he's established the leaders of this church and that we trust them and sustain them and that we give them our support. So it isn't just about me making a sacrifice to God and taking the church out of the loop. The church acts on behalf of God, and I give them the money.
You're making it worse. You're making my aversion to this whole thing worse, because that's the kind of stuff, like, that's the stuff you see on 60 Minutes when, like, oh, this cult indoctrination before everybody committed suicide.
Then let's examine a hypothetical. Let's just say that Christ manifests himself to you. He was there. He had the holes in the hands and the feet. He's like, Josh, hi, I'm real. I'm not going to show myself to everybody. I just wanted you to know that I'm real. And my church is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So do what they say. And then he goes away. And now you say, all right, what do I do? Well, I guess if the church says I should pay 10% of my money to them, I should do it.
Okay. Hypothetically, if some form of deity made themselves known to me in a way that I fully 100% believed in, and was able to sell to my wife, then yeah, you can bet that I would have the best attendance record at that church ever. But that's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is an abstract figure that you have only ever felt indirectly, or that you have attributed different moments in your life to this figure that is abstract. And because of the goodwill that this abstract figure has developed in your mind, you are willing to offset that by doing all these things, by serving all of this time and effort, and by giving all of this money. And I'm not really, while I am questioning I'm trying to attack you logically, because pathos, I got nothing. Sure. There's no emotion. I don't feel your emotions. I know this whole thing is emotion, so I have to attack it logically. And that is, Ben, from the outside looking in, none of this makes any sense, man.
I know. And there's a monetary value assigned to my personal time that I give up. You know, the 20 hours a week I give to being a seminary teacher, and the 2 years of my life I spent on a mission.
Holy crap. My brain was just struck by lightning. Thank you, Dustin Hoffman from Hook, for that line. It was, you are unpaid. You have a master's degree in education. You are educating children for hours of your life every day, and they have $32 billion sitting around doing nothing. Ben, they could pay you even a part-time salary. They can afford it, I promise.
I can claim $75 a semester in materials.
I am so... all right, so those facts linking up my brain have made me so much more angry. They are not only they demanding 10% of your money, they're demanding how much of your time, and they have all this wealth just accumulated doing nothing.
So I want to take a detour here and talk about something we haven't talked about. Back in 1970, there was a man by the name of Frederick Walsh in the city of New York that was outraged at the tax exemptions of the churches in his neighborhood. So he sued, and it went to the district court, and it went to the circuit court, and it went to the Supreme Court of the United States. And Frederick Walsh basically said that religion should not be exempt from paying property taxes.
Okay.
And the Supreme Court decided 8-1 that exemptions for property owed by religious organizations and used solely for religious worship did not violate the Establishment Clause of the U.S. Constitution. And they established a term called benevolent neutrality.
Oh, don't.
I'm citing law.
I know
here,
you're
Josh.
citing law, but you cannot claim benevolent neutrality when it comes to the LDS Church. There's way too much interference in politics they've had to be neutral.
Okay, so that gets into it. So in the Walsh decision, they basically cited benevolent neutrality, saying that you can't tax churches and abide the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States.
The separation of church and state.
Yes. So they upheld it, and it's been that way ever since. The following year, there was another decision called Lemon versus Kurtzman, and it established what's now called the Lemon Test to figure out what constitutes establishment or not, or whether or not a church is violating the nonprofit status.
The beneficial neutrality.
Yes. So does the money does it if you make a law related to a church, does what you're making the law about serve a secular purpose? Does it not have the primary effect of advancing or inhibiting religion? And does it not produce impermissible government entanglement with religion? So as long as it's done, and that's been upheld in subsequent decisions, 89 Texas Monthly versus Bullock.
All right. This is going a lot deeper than I expected it to, but as a complete like agnostic / atheist person over here, I am consistently frustrated with the amount of religious values that leach into public decision making. Most recently, Roe v. Wade being overturned by the Supreme Court is a horrifying decision from my perspective. I'm not like, that's not the official position of the Bad at Magic podcast, but I disagree with it personally because whether or not I personally believe abortions are correct is irrelevant. Whether is irrelevant to the conversation of whether or not somebody should be allowed to go have a medical procedure done. If I disagree with that, who cares? You can disagree with plastic surgery and people are still allowed to go get that. That's my problem, is that my personal values don't weigh into the public space. So whenever we start talking about political, like the separation of church and state, it's gotten so muddy recently, and I feel like nobody's trying to tackle it at all. There are a lot of religious beliefs that are leaking into politics that really shouldn't, and it drives me nuts. Everything that's happening in Florida with the kinds of education that teachers are allowed to provide to kids based purely on nothing else but like a handful of people think this is offensive, therefore nobody should learn it ever. Like,
so censorship, abortion.
But it goes across the spectrum. On the opposite side, where it's not the government inflicting religious things, there are religious organizations that inflict decisions on the government. For example, we talked about this on the podcast before. The LDS Church had a non-zero presence in California when they were deciding whether or not gay marriage should be legal. Marriage. That's how I struggle to understand how an organization like this that claims to be like, I get your values and I get that they're doing the good things, but how can they claim beneficial neutrality and benefit from their tax exempt status in the United States when they directly try to interfere with the legislative process of the United States?
Yeah, so you know the rules in the 501c3 that basically allow a church to take a stance on a moral issue if it isn't related to like a particular candidate or those kinds of things, and that was what happened in that particular situation.
Right, I get it. I get it. There's always ways to justify everything. That's not my point. My point is, if there is supposed to be true separation of church and state, which there isn't, there never has been and there never will be, but then we need to actually do it in action and not just by letter of the law.
I want to take a step back and see if I can summarize what you're saying. You're saying that you didn't actually say this part, but I'm assuming you're saying this part, is that there are some good things to be had from allowing or protecting the separation of church and state, allowing religions to exist and to operate freely in our country.
Yes. My personal stance is that if it doesn't bother me, if it's not impacting me directly, then do whatever you want to do. If you want to go to church, if you want to give 10% of your income, fine. I don't have any problems with that. It's when anybody that has differing opinions starts trying to put their opinions into law that differ from mine.
I didn't do any specific research on this, but I'm assuming religion has a beneficial effect on other things in a society.
I'm not going to lie. I didn't hear what you just said because I absolutely cannot let what I just say stand on the record.
Okay, go ahead.
If what I am doing doesn't impact your freedoms, then what I'm doing should be allowed, and vice versa. If what you are doing doesn't impact what I'm allowed to do, then do it. If you believe something that I am doing is wrong and you have no other basis than morality, then that should not be a pillar that you can build a law off of. It's kind
of like you said earlier, logos versus pathos or ethos.
Yes, if you have a logos reason for what I am doing that I should stop, then you should be able to create external laws to prevent me from doing that logos thing. If your only argument is pathos, then it should be irrelevant. But too often it's not. It's impossible for people in their minds to separate their morality, their own personal morality, from what they think, their judgment of what other people are doing.
So that's what I was going back to here, is that when the country was founded, there were people that fled Europe because the kings there had mixed politics and religion so effectively that people weren't free to make their own decisions about what they wanted to believe. So they came over here and established a whole new country and made that one of the founding principles.
Robin Williams put it best. The people that founded this country were so stuck up, even the British kicked them out.
So that's been upheld in decisions throughout time. I think and I haven't seen this specifically anywhere, but I think they've decided that it's worthwhile to protect it because of the benefits that you get from it. Like, yeah, the government isn't collecting taxes, property taxes, and taxes on tithing and stuff like that. But the church is providing a service. It's providing an outlet for people's faith and charitable giving and disaster relief and all those kinds of things.
All right, so I get that. But the church's morality, but it shouldn't go the other way. Like the government should allow churches to exist because churches, for the most part, are benevolent and good. For the most part. But that the other way, it shouldn't go the other way around. Churches shouldn't be able to influence politics with their pathos. Because how
do you measure that?
It's impossible to deny the fact that this is a Christian nation and our laws have Christian values. Period. Dot. That's just what it is. But we're getting way too deep in this. That we need to let's pull this back. We're not talking about separation of church and state. We are talking about the fact that the LDS church has way more money than they know what to do with, and people are still giving to it. And somehow that's fine. I mean, I don't have a problem with it. I just don't understand it. That's my thing. You have answered my question unsatisfactorily because the only argument that you can make is a pathos argument. There's a little bit of ethos in there. You believe to your core, and I believe you that you believe to your core that it is the right thing to do. But without the same fundamental assumptions at the beginning of this argument, I just cannot believe it. It makes no sense. Anytime I try to do the sums in my head, it comes out wanting.
Yeah. Well, that same scripture you quoted from in Malachi, the Lord says, "Bring ye all the tithes in the storehouse, that there may be meat in mine house." And I don't know what that meant back then, but I know what it means today.
That means you don't get to have that extra laptop for your kid going to college because the church needs to up its investment portfolio.
No, I don't know what they need to do with it, but the fact that I tithe is between me and God, not between me and Ensign Peak Incorporated.
We're going in circles because this is why. That is the reason. That question, that statement that you just said is the reason that I started researching, can I give my tithing directly to the poor? And the answer is no. So the church insists that there is a fallible human bureaucracy between you and God, and you're okay with it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, if you want to state it. I wouldn't say it that way, but I'll let you do it.
You don't think. All right. So you disagree with that statement.
Can I say it the way I would say in church?
How would you say it the way in church?
I tithe because the Lord commanded it, and I give it to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, who I sustain and uphold as God's church on the earth today.
It goes back to a question of trust. You don't trust the U.S. government, but you trust the LDS church.
Yeah.
Why is that? What did the LDS church do to earn that kind of devotion?
Again, like you said, I haven't had a personal manifestation of God, but I believe in him because I believe he's made himself known to me in the ways that he does. And I believe that I belong to his church, and I contribute based on that belief.
Do you believe in that because God told you, or because the church told you and you're associating those God feelings with the church?
I know which one you want to believe.
Well, I know exactly what I believe. My beliefs aren't being examined here. If you want to start talking,
I think God told me, but you used a good example in the last podcast. How do you explain what something spicy is to someone that's never tasted spicy food?
How dare you use my own words against me? I hate it when people do that. You're right. I'm sure that I've had what you would consider, I'm sure we've had these same experiences. I'm sure we have felt the same feelings. You attribute them to the church and to God, and I attribute them to something secular or something manifest that's physically in front of me. I'm not going to bash you for where you put your faith. I can't question faith. That's what faith is. It is what it is, and there's nothing that I can do to shake it. And I'm not trying. If I've come across this podcast as trying to shake your faith, I'm not. If anything, the real question I'm trying to levy is the bureaucracy. Is because there is no doubt that this, how many people work full time as administrative staff for the LDS church?
I don't know, several thousand.
Yeah, enough that it becomes cumbersome. Enough that you have to have robust, internal auditing standards to make sure that the money that is tithed to the local church gets to the central church without it being defrauded or laundered or stolen or skimmed or whatever.
Yeah, today was the semi-annual general conference of the church, and during the second session, they always have us do two things. Sustain the leaders by name. They read them off, and we raise our hand and say that we sustain them. And the other thing is the head auditor from the church audit department stands up and reads the audit report to the prophet.
All right, so you have accountants, like guys that just have a full Logos education and the management of money, like full-time
and go
employee.
through all of this and audit that however much money they got is the same amount that they have, and it went to the places they said it went.
Which the fact that you have those speaks to a requirement to have those, speaks to the fact that the bureaucracy is so large no single person can manage it without dropping some of the balls.
No, and definitely balls get dropped sometimes. There's no doubt.
So then why then, Ben? Like we have a whole statement
It's never been the case. Like, all right, every church on earth except the one that's right does everything perfectly. No.
Is this the LDS church? The LDS church is the church that got it right. That is a South Park joke you recognize.
No,
there's a South Park episode where people went to they were at the foot.
I love this clip. Link in the show notes.
The doorsteps of hell, and they're like, "Wait, I was a devout Catholic. I shouldn't be here. Oh, sorry, you picked the wrong religion. But I was a Jehovah's Witness. Like, oh, you picked the wrong one too. Well, what was the right one? Mormon. Yes, Mormon was the correct religion."
And then Matt Parker and Trey Songz proceeded to release a hit musical on Broadway mocking the church.
1979, when God changed his mind about black people. Like,
no, okay. I know that you just brought that up as an example, but that's a great example of something that I think that was an example of fallible humans rather than a perfect God.
We have talked about this before.
Yes.
Because this is one of the things that I will give the church. Like, you know what? Got to tip my hat to them. They are willing to change, kind of very slowly in the ways that large bureaucracies do, based on trends in development of social acceptance and whatnot. The money thing, that's what got me, because they have so much. I'm
surprised how much research you did.
All right, so longtime listeners know that I don't do a lot of research. But like I said, Ben, this was a fascinating and almost macabre? I don't know how to pronounce that word. But like a gothic rabbit hole that I went down.
Both correct.
Things got more and more Alice in Wonderland the more and more I read. I read a press release by the LDS Church and a press release by the SEC, and both of those made perfect sense to me. And then I started researching these things that people do.
Because those are written like logos.
Well, But
when you ask the why, it gets into the pathos and the ethics.
I started asking the why, and things got crazier and crazier and crazier to the point where I feel like I am in a room and I am trapped, and I'm not going to be able to get out unless I drink the bottle that says drink me
that's
or
why
eat the cookie that says eat me.
Hypothetical. Josh, if like Link opening a treasure chest, I could bestow upon you some magical item, and you're like, oh, God is real. Now all of this makes sense. I'm telling you, it's that easy.
It's just having faith that the entire universe is ordered by an intelligence that is incomprehensible, and putting all of your faith that things will work out if you believe in him and do the things that this fallible government-like institution tells you to do.
No, tithing goes back to the Old Testament,
which is written by a bunch of people that were trying to take one religion and another and jam them together so they didn't have riots in the streets during the Constantine era.
I think you said it perfectly. I think that's a great place to end.
What right there? Just with that. We're just going to leave it hanging. Just this whole thing
okay, all right, here's my summary. You quoted a scripture from Malachi chapter 3, verse 10.
All right. No. That will not stand. I didn't quote Jack. I am quoting somebody else that quoted Malachi. Yes.
All right. So that scripture comes from the Old Testament. God has always required sacrifice of his people because I think that's part of his plan. That we're here on earth, if you want to call it a simulation or whatever, that he sent his children down here to earth and then he gives them rules to follow. If you want to try to obscure that away by calling it some organization led by people, whatever, I believe that they're acting on behalf of God and that I am being improved by trying to follow. And obedience is required, faith is required, and doing those things will purify my soul and help me become more like him. I can contribute to charities that do good things. The organization that I belongs to helps improve people's lives, and I feel like it's a positive sum game. All right, listeners, what do you think? If you want to weigh in, if you think I wasn't a sufficient defender of the faith, if you think that the churches should be taxed every penny.
Don't you even caricature me like that.
Go weigh in on our subreddit anonymously, or you can go on our Facebook page and jump in on the debate and tell what it is that you think. And don't try to paint Josh into a corner.
If you like what we do, share us with a friend. If you like us, maybe your friends will like us too. If you really want to show us some love, consider giving us a good review on the podcast player of your choice. It is phenomenal, the visibility we can get from that. And if you want me to sit over here baffled, shaking my head at Ben from now until the rest of eternity, consider becoming a patron on our Patreon page.
And until next time, try to be a little less bad at magic.